Why Whitnell and I? Every scene is a memorable scene, a script which its director had wanted to realise for over 15 years or so, the ultimate film tribute to the legacy of the swinging London era or the idealistic, carefree hedonism of the 1960s as a whole. An experience inspired heavily by Bruce Robinson's own in his younger years, which can serve as both a ruthlessly cold, moving film, a tragic comedy about the acceptance of growing up and moving on from youthful desires slash the embrace of fun in favour of responsibility and becoming a respectable contributor participant in the wider society, entering adulthood in lieu of arrested adolescence. Or it could be conversely perceived as the justification of good memories. One could feel the positivity of or Paul McGann's character slash narrator, thoroughly glad to have experienced what he had, no regrets other than he is no longer accompanied by a dear compatriot. I is very pleased to be moving on to the next stage in his life. He has no desire to control Whitnell, wishes to some degree Whitnell could accompany him, but he does not want Whitnell to change, his beloved friend, and so must leave him be. Whitnell's heartbreak at the film's close is among the most palpable in cinema history thus far, still, especially considering what the original intended ending would have been. Whitnell had taken his friend for granted on the surface, though Whitnell had at least partly enabled the excitement and memorability of their experiences. On the one hand, considered something of a hangout film, everyone gets together with some friends, drinks or drugs to view Whitnell and I, but on the other hand, maybe this film about a character moving on from the 60s is thoroughly poignant and something which many younger people try often not to think too much about. Any youthful cultural movements toward freedom, bliss, and do what thou wilt are heirs to the 60s moment of accused hedonism. Now the more recent equivalent, if it still stands today, is the club, EDM, rave universe. Some organically move on, others, though they have the grand desires, as Whitnell had to be the finest thespian of his generation, are so consumed with passion that their trust in their intuition leads them to take every ounce of pleasure from life. Unfortunately for Whitnell, this entails nothing but leisurely drinking, no working or supposed efforts to speak of. In an idealistic mind of a younger person, eventually, one day now, they'll feel motivated enough to do what they told everyone they wanted to do. For Whitnell, toward the end, he realizes that day might never come and that he enjoys talking about his dreams, lazily celebrating the future, rather than trying to enact it. He knows it isn't as fun, and so might his dreams be less desirable than he initially had liked. They assumed it would all work out. It isn't that Whitnell felt as though Marwood, his name in the script is, had abandoned him, I don't really think, but that Marwood had made the steps to move on, it had worked, and thus through Whitnell's comforting philosophy that everything would fall into his lap, completely out of orbit. One day, one might have to follow a formula in order to realize their ideals, their dreams, and thus distrust their minds, the origin of their dreams, in lieu of some external, cold, clinical, boring by comparison, less certain by comparison, wisdom. In that world, there are no dreams, only limping compromises, but some would describe that as accepting maturity and responsibility, becoming grounded in reality. Marwood's smile was sincere, though. Marwood had not compromised at all, really. Whitnell held Marwood so close to his heart that he hadn't realised their desires slightly diverged. Whitnell realised his own present state of happiness, if it can be called that, was not due to his own pride in himself, but from Marwood's faithful companionship. That's what gave Whitnell confidence in himself more than anything, really. From Marwood's perspective, the film is totally a happy one, but for Whitnell there is the hope that the desire to drink, to party, to indulge is the same as the desire to fulfill one's professed dreams, ideals, outcomes. They might not truly align, as Whitnell believed. In this respect, Whitnell and I might be one of the best films ever made about growing up, but I also think it pointedly encourages one to not judge or compromise on the positivity of memories. It isn't as though by the 1980s that those who had grown up with the swinging 60s all wanted a complete return. Many had had families, maybe embraced sobriety, or some more productive, supposedly, or wholesome cause in their life's work, though a fond memory was a fond memory. Whether Whitnell and I as a happy or sad film is indicative of one's place in life, perhaps, and that is its uncanny staying power across people's lives, maybe much like our response to one's own memories of formative youthful exuberance and carefree indulgence, as depicted in this special, unforgettable cinema classic.